Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. We are starting things off with Super Ember Kaboom. This is a 2D platformer where you play as this fox spirit, who the rainy elementals in the world have been kidnapped by bad guys, and we're going to platform our way around in order to save them. The structure of each level is that you'll do basic platforming, run, jump, wall jump, that kind of thing, and you're looking for various diamonds. The diamonds act as the keys to unlock various areas and get into the harder parts of the game. You are also able to find other elemental spirits that when you pick them up, you'll gain a short time power-up, such as being able to shoot a fireball, throw these kinds of light balls as you can see, and other things. Now, from what we played of this one on stream, the controls and the general gameplay work. This game does feel like it's a little bit on the easier side, and while the developer does say that it's easier to learn, difficult to master, it seemed like one of those games where if you have any skill at 2D platformers, you should be more than acquainted with the design of this one. The developer has added in more levels over the course since we last played this one, I think about a year ago. But I would say that if you're a fan looking for another 2D platformer to play, one that is not really going to tax your masochism platforming skills, then I think this is a great one to check out, and one for someone who may be like new or learning platforming. But with that said, I think this is a very solid game that does what it kind of sets out to do. We now switch over to Kombinera, which hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly there. This is a platformer puzzle style game where our kind of mechanic here is that you must combine all the various balls that are appearing in each level. The different colors will impact what things they can interact with, and as the levels go on, you'll be introduced to different colors with different rules and areas that they can explore. Now, this game features that kind of standard mechanic that when you move one, you move all. So the challenge of this one is figuring out how to move to keep the balls that are in the safe position safe and get the other ones where you need to go. Advanced levels will add in multiple colors at the same time, and of course going from 2 to 3 and so on. So for this one, I would say it's a bit on the challenging side. Not only do you have to figure out how to move each ball at the same time, but you're also dealing with kind of the platforming physics as well. And you'll have to make some very challenging jumps in a few spots to avoid spikes and get where you need to go. On the positive side, the game seems to keep, at least from what we played on stream, to being on a single screen. I couldn't imagine doing a game like this when you have to deal with multiple screens and moving everything at the same time. This one is certainly going to be on the more challenging side for you. But if you are someone who is looking for another kind of puzzle platformer and are kind of good at multitasking, then I would definitely check this one out. We're back to platforming with Mago, hopefully I pronounced that right. This is a 2D platformer where we play as the wizard Mago here, who when his girlfriend is kidnapped by an evil wizard, he is going to have to explore various worlds and themes in order to save her, beat the bad guys, and collect lots of MacGuffins along the way. The pixel art here I think is pretty solid. The gameplay will revolve around you being able to show these magic stars that can freeze or transform enemies, so you can of course jump on them to finish them off or use them as additional platforms. Now, this is one of those platformers where you don't immediately get to your full speed. You need to like kind of run for like a split second before you kind of hit top speed in order to make some of the jumps. Now, what Mago does pretty well is that there is a lot of things to do in this game. Each world will have different enemies, different kinds of like mini sections or special sections to do. There are collectibles and more to find in it, including some very challenging bosses. This one is certainly going to be, I wouldn't say on the difficult side, but it is on the more challenging side as far as 2D platformers go. But all in all, this one definitely has a lot of charm to it, and it's another really solid indie platformer that we had a chance to play. So once again, if you're looking for a platformer, this one again a little bit more on the challenging side, then I would recommend checking out Mago. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break. We have 3 more games to look at for this week's showcase. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. We finally get to a non-platformer for this week's showcase with Blacken Slash. This is a roguelite where instead of using deck building and stuff like that, we're collecting various programs that we attach as we explore a retro computer. It is the 80s, we're going to fight using synth, that strange like triangle thing that we saw in a lot of like 80s covers and so on. So for this one, all your available powers and abilities have to be installed to your character, and then they show up as part of your action bar that you see at the bottom. Each level will have a different objective, but more often than not, your job is going to be to kill all the enemies. If you run out of health, you will of course die and you'll have to restart your run. Now the game does feature roguelite elements, so you can kind of carry over equipment that you've upgraded and power up to subsequent plays. Now, from what we played of this one, it does feel a little bit on the limited side, hence the smaller price tag compared to some of the many other roguelikes and roguelites that we've played. But the mechanics are certainly on point. It's a very streamlined and satisfying experience. And I would say that if you are looking for a shorter base roguelite, then this should be at least one worth checking out. We now have Tokoyo Tower of Perpetuity. This is an action roguelite, kind of mixed with like a Touhou or like bullet hell kind of like aesthetic and charm. We play as a variety of different characters who are all trying to climb the Tower of Perpetuity, which in turn will grant them some kind of wish or desire. Staying in their way, of course, is going to be all manner of demons, obstacles, and tricky jumps to make. So what makes this game kind of interesting from some of the other ones we've played is that it is an action roguelike, but you do not get different runs each time you play. How this works is that every 24 hours the game will generate a new tower, and this will be what people will run with a kind of a score list or high score list that you can compete with. Each character comes with kind of a different super move, which is designed to get around enemies or attack anything that gets in their way. You do not have the means of attacking normally. There are a variety of items to find, those that will give you more jumps, increased speed, health, and so on. As you climb the tower, you will also face different bosses, who kind of take in the form of a bullet hell fight, where you must avoid their patterns until they are in their kind of weak phase. That will allow you to finish them off. Now you die, you can either keep going at the cost of losing your score, or restart and try again. Now the different characters, again, while they each have like a different special move, the basics of the game are not changing. And that is kind of a limitation of Tower of Perpetuity. That once you've been in it once, there really isn't enough here, in my opinion, that's going to keep you coming back, unless you are really into the high score chasing. The concept, I think, is pretty well done. And it would have been nice to have like unlocks, or maybe like if you win enough matches, you unlock like the harder tower or the more challenging variant and stuff like that. Now the platforming can be a little hit or miss in some areas. The game features a lot of tricky jumps, platforms that disappear, moving and stuff like that. And you're not really given like super precise jumping in the same way as we would say in like an N++ or a Super Meat Boy. And it is very easy to get into a situation where you're just not able to make a jump up across something, you're just taking hit after hit after hit, and what items you get will greatly impact the difficulty, such as being able to get multiple jumps or increasing your jump height. So all in all, this is one of those games where it's an interesting concept, And I think for some of you watching this, it's going to work for you. But I can just think of some more interesting action roguelikes who can really push the replay value more. But you're looking for one that is kind of on the lower side in terms of variance, and one you can just focus on the platforming, then this one may at least work for you on that front. For our last game of this week's showcase, this is the Dark Heart of Balor. Please note the footage you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of the game. This is kind of like a dark fantasy action adventure, almost like a mix of a Castlevania style game with the more involved combat system of like a Souls-like or a Soul Sanctuary, that kind of thing. When the evil demon Balor has invaded the world, it is up to one lone soldier to hack, slash, and jump and use spells in order to save the world. Now, even though I did mention a Souls-like and Soul Sanctuary a minute ago, this is definitely on the action side. You're not going to be exploring multiple areas and returning. The game itself is structured in a stage-by-stage format. Each stage will have a variety of enemies, obstacles, and treasures for you to find, and it's going to be up to you to get from point A to point B relatively unscathed. As the game goes on, you'll be able to unlock different abilities and upgrade your character, and after an event where you of course meet a spirit who will help you, you will gain access to the power of magic, which will allow you some more range alternatives and additional forms like that. All in all, from what we played of this one, and again, we played this like pretty much relatively early into its early access, the combat felt good, the platforming is on point. We did run into a few bugs and issues, like with some of the triggers not going off right. That of course could just be with the early access or with that original build. If there were any issues with this game, is that it does feel a little bit on the generic side. It doesn't really, at least from what we played of it, do anything that I would say is above and beyond for the genre. What's here certainly works, but if you're hoping for kind of a reinvention or an iteration on these themes and design, I don't think this game's going to quite work for you. But if you are an action fan, looking for another excuse to run around stabbing skeletons, shooting magic blasts into wolves, and of course fighting demons, then I would say to at least check out the Dark Heart of Balor. And with that, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. I'd like to thank all the developers who submitted games. Again, if you'd like me to play your game for a future stream and video, please reach out, do all the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do, visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.